Hola a todos, me llamo María Gómez Silva y les saludo desde el estudio de la revista Inversión y Finanzas.com. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre un activo que es bastante desconocido en España, pero que conviene tener en el radar. Es la deuda municipal estadounidense. Para hablar de ello tenemos con nosotros hoy a un experto en la materia. Se trata de Jeffrey Berger, que es gestor del BNY Mellon US Municipal Infrastructure Debt Fund y que nos saluda desde Nueva York. Hello Jeffrey, thank you for joining me today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, Jeffrey, let's talk about municipal debt. The first question is very simple. What are the so-called munis?
Municipal bonds are issued to finance vitally important U.S. infrastructure, roads, tunnels, airports, hospitals, colleges, universities. They are issued by the 50 United States, as well as the thousands upon cities and counties across the entire United States. They're not issued by the federal government. So municipals are a great diversifier from U.S. Treasury bonds.
Can you summarize the history of this asset? I think that it was established in 1812.
That's correct, 1812, which was 117 years prior to the issuance of the first U.S. Treasury bond. The reason this market exists, as I mentioned, is to fund infrastructure. The United States is very unique in that the federal government, the president, the Congress, the Supreme Court, are not responsible for building U.S. infrastructure. That's our form of government. And because of this fact, infrastructure is financed by the various United States as well as our cities and counties. Therefore, in 1812, the city of New York needed to build a canal. And to finance that canal, they issued the first U.S. municipal bond. Out of that has grown to a $4 trillion market with over 55,000 issuers of municipal bonds.
Wow. And what type of projects do you invest in?
We invest in various projects across the entire United States, across various sectors, all of which provide a positive impact to their local communities. The type of projects we invest in are water facilities, sewer facilities, public utilities, hospitals, colleges, governments that are building new cities and new schools and new housing. They're very important type of core infrastructure projects with a very, very low probability of default.
And what type of projects you don't invest in? What type of projects you don't like?
The type of projects we don't like are those that are very speculative. Those type of projects that may not have the type of credit fundamentals that are consistent with our strategy. We aim to invest in projects that not only serve a positive impact to their local communities, but have proven success in very sound credit fundamentals.
And why is it interesting for a foreign investor? I've read that the relationship between yield and risk is one of its benefits, given its low default rates. Why is this?
The reason that this asset class is particularly attractive to overseas investors is because municipals provide yield and safety. The yield benefit of owning a municipal bonds is greater than a U.S. Treasury, and it is coming with much better credit protection versus U.S. corporate bonds. The reason that this is the case is in largely due to the fact that this asset class has been under-researched outside the United States. We at BNY Mellon are trying our best to change that fact, and we have the largest global UCITS fund in the world open to overseas investors to access this asset class.
What are the yields typically?
The yields are treasury yields plus about 80 to 90 basis points. So the yields are very attractive compared to treasuries in our opinion, and they are comparable, if not greater, than many corporate bonds. But the difference between a U.S. municipal and a corporate bond is there is a much greater credit risk, in our opinion, associated with a corporate bond, but a much lower credit risk for a U.S. muni.
Why do you prefer municipal bonds over federal bonds?
The reason that the municipal bonds tend to have a lower risk profile versus others has to do with the essential aspect of this asset class. Again, because these bonds are financing vitally important U.S. infrastructure, there really is not much competition for what they are providing. So, for example, a municipal bond issuer might be Harvard University. It might be the state of Virginia. These are very, very strong governmental units that have a very low probability of default, and they have very, very strong ability to raise taxes or fees to whatever amount is necessary to repay bondholders.
And what are the advantages of accessing it from Spain?
The advantages for an investor in Spain to invest in a U.S. municipal is it's one of the best markets in U.S. fixed income that is providing yield and safety. It's also a strong diversifier versus other asset classes. So many investors outside the United States, particularly in Spain, are very familiar with U.S. Treasury bonds. They're very familiar with investment grade corporate bonds. What they may not be familiar with is this asset class. And it is for that reason that they're still attractive yields. It's just simply under-researched. So some of the advantages for an overseas investor, particularly in Spain, is the fact that you get a relatively high yield with a very low probability of default, with very good diversification versus other asset classes, and it's financing positive impact type projects.
And finally, can you summarize the performance of the fund? Year to date, it is around 6% up, I think.
That's correct. So year to date performance has been very, very strong. In fact, since inception, this fund has outperformed U.S. Treasury Index, the U.S. Ag Index, the the Global Ag Index. So the performance since inception has been very, very strong, in particular this year. Some of the reasons this is the case is because the asset class has been providing a significant amount of yield. And as the United States is about to embark, in our opinion, on an easing cycle, we think the time for entry into this fund is now. And the reason is yields are likely to begin coming down. And as yields begin to come down, prices will go up. And as that happens, the total return we've seen to date, in our opinion, is really likely to continue throughout the medium term.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you, Jeffrey. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Y a ustedes, gracias por acompañarnos y hasta pronto.